Hey, all you space cats. Welcome to the Black Hole Podcast, Season 7, Episode 39. I'm Mitch Miller, your host, the most neutral person in the world, quite possibly, the most transparent presidential candidate that you'll find, and I am also a free market entrepreneur and possibly the most underground artist in the world since this podcast started in a coal mine several years ago. Okay, I'm going to say this. If you want prices to immediately go down, right? Inflation, these high prices of food and everything else. If you want these prices to go down, vote for Trump. Okay? Vote for Trump. He'll get together with his billionaire friends and bring the prices down fairly quickly. The billionaires saw an opportunity during the pandemic and saw that there was a Democrat in office and knew that most of this stuff would get blamed on the president, as it always does. They saw the opportunity during the pandemic to raise their margins, and they jacked up prices, which is generically called inflation, but we could just call it price gouging because that's what it is. Now, once a Republican's in office, they want to make him look good so he gets another term. So they'll bring the prices down fairly quickly, right? So that's the honest truth here. Now, Harris, if she's in office, she's going to try to regulate the prices, supposedly, so it doesn't happen again, right? But people forget and rules get softened, and in about 20 years, we'll be in the same boat again probably anyway. So if you want immediate price dropping in your more money in your wallet immediately, vote for Trump. If you want to try to regulate the price gouging, to try to hold these executives that hide behind their corporations accountable, vote for Harris. If you don't think that it should work like this, that a bunch of rich buddies should get together and manipulate prices to make one candidate look better than the other, if you don't think it should work like this, and that we should have an independent media that shows us the executives that are price gouging us, so that we can challenge them to a duel to bring the prices down, vote for me, right? Let's bring these executives out in the open. Let's challenge them to a duel. Winner. If I win, you got to lower prices. If they win, they can keep gouging us for another year until they're qualified for me to challenge them again, right? All right. So I want to talk about Donald Trump, former President Trump, and immigration, right? And what I would do if I was the Harris campaign. I would open a call line, an 800 number, for anyone that worked for any of Trump's businesses that was an undocumented worker. And we're going to get into the border and immigration. But this is the strategy I would take as a candidate if I was a lawyer and I had $540 million. You're telling me all of his golf courses, all of his hotels, the landscapers were all legal citizens, the cleaning staff. None of these people were undocumented workers over the past 40, 50 years. I found a social media post. I know it's not, I like to precursor this, so it came from social media, so I can't guarantee the factualness of this, but it listed all the fines that Trump had paid over the years, and in 1991, allegedly, he paid $1.4 million for hiring undocumented workers. He paid a $1.4 million fine in 1998 for hiring undocumented workers. So at some point he did, right? So if I were a lawyer like Madam Vice President Harris, I would say we're not going to deport you if you report working for Trump, and we could even reach down into Mexico for the people that were deported. We're going to make Trump and his business sponsor your citizenship. right? Rather than bringing suits about representing yourself to banks, right? This is the corporate communist way. We're going to make sure the bankers are getting the honest truth. Why not, if you're going to take Trump down, force him to use his money and his millions to sponsor workers that he thought were decent enough people to work on his properties, right? Apparently they're not the criminals that he's talking about. But this proves the point that this corporate communist system of two parties, Republican and Democrat, exists if we just look at the border to see how it works, right? We have our two parties. Now, undocumented workers coming from South America, from Mexico, they have no rights and they can't unionize. Republicans love this type of worker. Look at the strategies they've deployed in every state in this union to take away workers' rights or to block workers receiving rights. I guess that would be more accurate. So, the Republicans love this type of worker. The Democrats are perceived as weak on the border. They might deploy different strategies and policies at the border rather than building a wall, which seems to every common sense American to make sense. We know if we build a fence between our neighbor's yard, it keeps the animals out. It keeps the neighbors from wandering into our yard. It's a simple concept. A wall works, right? It makes sense. Democrats have other strategies, but they're generally against a wall. They're perceived as weak. So they let the undocumented workers into the country, right? It's part of this two-party corporate communist system. They bring up points that allow more undocumented workers to come into the country, and the Republicans put them to work in meat packaging plants and other companies. And then both parties manipulate the media so that the common folk are arguing over the border. Right? The media points out any criminal that is undocumented and brings that out into the headlines and the forefront as much as possible, especially during an election year. So that's how this two-party corporate communist system works. They're working together, and they manipulate the media so that we're angry at each other about immigration and the border. Now, I would adopt a different strategy. I would adopt as many strategies as possible and as it takes to secure our border. I agree with securing our border, but I think as far as a wall, I think we should stabilize Mexico, make it as safe and stable as our northern neighbor, Canada. Now, I'm not saying it should be an open border. The policies in place can stay in place. I'm just saying, why not invest some of our strategies in stabilizing Mexico? A 541-mile wall at the southern border of Mexico, between Mexico and Guatemala, versus a 1,954-mile wall here between the United States and Mexico. I believe that 540-mile wall is a lot easier to guard, right? It's less resources ultimately. And you beef up the Mexican Coast Guard, and you're starting to address some of these issues. I would also deploy our crime computers as much as possible, as we can partner with governments in South America and Mexico. But the other strategy I would deploy is this one I was talking about with Trump. Force U.S. companies to sponsor undocumented workers, right? If the jobs are there and the companies will hire, then it encourages more undocumented workers to come in. So why wouldn't we force the U.S. companies to sponsor their citizenship. I would set up a call line or some kind of interface, an app, where you can report employment. Hey, I worked in this meatpacking plant. I worked at this whatever for several weeks. And this would reach out to people who were deported to Mexico, living in Mexico. They can report it and testify that they worked at this facility, possibly upload pictures, things like that. And it's going to be clear that if you report on this, you're not going to be deported. The company is going to be forced to sponsor your citizenship. And if we make these bigger companies sponsor these people's citizenship, right? They found benefit from having them in the United States. They should make it right and sponsor their citizenship. If we force these large companies, it's probably going to make it easier for small businesses to do this, make it more cost effective, because when you get the big dogs involved, it usually brings the cost down, right? At least that's the perception. They're the good negotiators. They're going to figure out the loopholes, and they're going to figure out how to make this cost effective. Now, I've laid out many strategies to make the U.S. less corrupt, because I believe it's a hugely corrupt nation. That's why we have the candidates that we have, and that they have any kind of sway in this election. But I've come up with many strategies to make the U.S. government transparent, and I believe I can come up with strategies for Mexico and work with the Mexican government to stabilize it to a higher degree, if they would have me. So, as president, obviously, I would work hand in hand with Mexico, but I'm not president, and it's not looking good. The polls are out, and I'm not leading any of the polls. So, there's that. I'd like to close with an idea for a novel, another book. I told you I'm writing one about my 68-day stay in a mental facility. In this book, it's like a continuation of the book Femme Party. I'm a character within the book, Mitch Miller, and it involves President Grump and his second term as president. So we kind of open on this. And so the military, in coordination with the hotel companies, have developed a weapon that can cause a brain tumor in certain guests at certain hotels. Right? We have our people hiding behind missiles, nuclear weapons, politicians, so on and so forth. So the next logical step is we'll use wireless waves to put a tumor in certain targets' brains, and you'll be able to just click a button on your phone if you're the president and eliminate a target, right? So they do this by putting equipment in adjacent rooms or empty broom closets. They see your reservation, they put you in a specific room. This wireless equipment is set up, it's projected into your room, and while you sleep or don't sleep, a tumor develops in your brain if you're exposed to it enough nights or enough time. It's an undetectable small tumor that they figured out the right frequency to develop. And this is based off of real life experiences I had at hotels. I ended up next to a mechanical closet in Berlin. I asked them to show me what was in there. They wouldn't show me what was in there. And it's an overall strategy I believe the corporate communists have developed when people travel to a nation or travel to a city to engage in negotiations between corporations. I believe that they've been putting equipment in, around, or outside of these rooms to keep certain executives awake at night so that they're not at 100% when they have to negotiate the next day. And this carries over into a weapon in coordination with the military. Enough experimentation has been done, enough studies, top secret studies, not the ones that they will publish about wireless waves. And so we have President Grump is given this weapon where he can just eliminate a target by clicking on his phone. And I'm one of these targets for various reasons. And during the novel, I become a consultant for an electric car company, then the governor of California with my genius ideas for these entities. And then I even get hired by the Trump corporation, or whatever the name of the entity is, Trump businesses, to be a consultant with them. And that's where this tension grows, because I'm sitting in the same room with Trump, and he pulls out Grump pulls out his device and is able to see that power possibly realized right in his hands. So that's a proposal for a novel. It's based on conspiracy theories, I know. But anyhow, that's all I wanted to get into on this episode. Until next time, which may be the last podcast of this season, I wish you peace, prosperity, and homeostasis.